Hello everyone, I'm Rafa, and it's been 3.5 years that I found out that I'm autistic. So I'm a late diagnosed autistic person. I was kind of like trying not to make this video, but at the same time, I think it's really important to talk about this. But it's a sensitive subject to talk about people's lives, and I know that this video has the potential to reach people that don't know, like me. Like, I didn't know I was autistic until I was 27, and the way I found out was like totally unexpected. I'll tell you in a second. I just want to say that this is me sharing my experience. I'm 30, so it's been 3.5 years that I was officially diagnosed, and that really changed my life. Finding out that I'm autistic really changed my life, and I'll tell you why during this video. So I was thinking about writing a script to do this video. I tried like twice. I started typing things that I wanted to talk about here, but it doesn't make sense to me to just like get all ready to talk about this. So I just decided like now that I would just take a shower and do it while I was taking off this nail polish. So it was 2021, and I was very like depressed. I was having panic attacks. I was anxious, you name it. Like, I was a mess. It was right after or like during the pandemics, like a little later. So it was like a weird time for everyone, I'm sure, but I was having all this weird stuff happening in my mind. And I sat down to watch Glow Up on Netflix. It was like season 3 that had just came out, and I had watched the first 2. I'm really big on art competition. It doesn't matter which type of art. So I was excited about it. And when I started watching it, I saw this person. Her name was Sophie, and the way she moved her eyes and the way she appeared, like her, like the way she was, I kind of identify with her. Like, I was like, that's weird, like she kind of like exists the way I exist. It was like totally weird, but it was okay. Like, sometimes we just think we are similar to someone else. So I was okay. And then she said that she was autistic. And to me, that was mind-blowing, because autism to me was like that stereotypical thing. Like, usually a boy screaming or quiet, like something like that, and kids. So when she said she was autistic, like, the world I knew just came down to pieces, and I was like, what? And then there was another guy there that he was autistic also. So I was watching the show, and I spent the whole night watching it, because when I started it was like 8 at night, and then I just watched the whole thing because I wanted to know more about Sophie, and like how they present the person like throughout the episodes and stuff. And when I saw like Sophie color palettes and things she chose, like the colors and her style, I found that so interesting, because she used colors that I use in my color palette. It's weird because like a lot of people that know my work, they talk about my color palette, like, oh, your color palette is really like unusual. You use colors, like the mix of colors that you do like they seem not to make sense, but the way you put it, they do make sense. And she does the same thing, and I was like amazed by that. And I was like, okay. And then after that, I was just like, oh, and by the way, she won the thing. And I was like shocked because she talked, she did all the things like that she had to do in art. She was very like unique in her stuff. I found like, to me, that was like just like me. I was like, so if she was autistic, I could be autistic too, because she's peculiar in a way that I know that I'm peculiar too. And then my whole life experience of being autistic, and I didn't know it, but I was autistic. So I started remembering things like my mom one time told me something about Asperger's, and then I remember like being alone in school. I remember like a bunch of things that I went to YouTube to research all of that. So I typed autism adult girls, and then a bunch of videos showed up, and I was just like, okay, let's just click in one and watch. That was like already like 4 a.m, something like that. And then I started seeing like all these girls saying that they found out when they were adults, like 20 something, 30 something, that they were autistic, and everything they talked about I identify with, like all the experiences they shared, like most of them, I would say, yeah, I experienced the same thing like my whole life. So I found out this whole new world. And the next day I talked to my mom. Like I just asked her, have ever some of the doctors that I went told you that I might be autistic? And then she was like, why are you asking me that? And I was like, because I think I'm autistic. And she said, no, first she put her back like against the wall, like she needed support. So she was like, and she said, why you say that? And I was like, because my whole life points to that direction. Like I'm reading about autism and I just fit in the thing, like I might be autistic. And then she told me that when I was a kid, like 4th or 5th grade, one of the teachers told her that I might have Asperger's, but she didn't really care because I went to doctors my whole life, like since I was like 2 or something, because of my behavior, because I was a weird kid. So like I cried a lot, I was very extreme in my behaviors, I didn't sleep, all of the weird stuff that autistic kids may have. So I used to hurt myself, like stuff like that. I used to have a lot of meltdowns. And so yeah, my mom, she told me, okay, so let's see, like if that's accurate, let's find out. So I looked for a specialist and I did all the tests that they do, like the questions and stuff. It took like 4 sessions, and the result was, yeah, I'm autistic and I have ADHD. But the ADHD I already knew. Well, kinda. I didn't know that ADHD was a thing, but I knew, like my mom, one of the neuropsychologists that she took me, said that I had ADHD, and this was one of the reasons why my mom stopped searching for something else, because I already got this response from a doctor. And I took medication for ADHD my whole life. And I think that too helped, like with my like masking, my autism traits. But not really, because I had meltdowns my whole life. I had shutdowns too. I was very strict in my everything. I still am, but after my diagnosis, my life got better. Like, not like the formal diagnosis, that too, because here in Brazil, with my formal diagnosis from a doctor with a signature and stuff, I have access to priority places to park, lines when I need to go to the bank or something, So there's that, but also like acknowledging that autism exists and I'm autistic made me be calm, about my life, about what I have to offer to the world, and about me just being me. Like, I'm not broken, I'm just like, my brain works in a different way, and that's okay too. Like, that's the beauty about being a human. Like, we're all different and it's fine. So I learned how to manage my emotions. I think that was like the main point for me about finding out my autism, because I was just like, okay, first I went to therapy my whole life. Like, since I was a kid, I've always been to therapy. There were times that I didn't, like for a year, but then I had to go back, and then I would change therapists and different approaches, and my family moved a lot too, so I had another town, I had to find another therapist, but my whole life, like, I went to therapists, and it was hard because I felt like they didn't understand me, like things that I was saying. So I always felt alone, and it was hard because I felt alone at home, I felt alone in school, I felt alone with doctors, like people that were supposed to help me. And then after my diagnosis at 27, I understood why like so many of my relationships didn't work out, and why I would have like meltdowns and stuff like that because of something that people consider simple. So it's like a bunch of life realizations that I got after the diagnosis. And well, now 3.5 years later, I feel that I'm a different person. Like, I don't really talk about autism anymore. Like at first I would, like all the time. Like right after my diagnosis, I was going to therapy, and my therapist was autistic. Like I made sure I would find an autistic therapist, and I found one, and she was an autism specialist, and she was great. So I stayed with her for 3 years after my diagnosis. So it's been 6 months pretty much that I stopped going to therapy, because she said that she released me, and that was like so new to me. Like, I cried because my whole life I went to therapy, like many therapists, and I never got released. I just like moved town, or I stopped for a while and then got back to it, and this time she said, okay, so I think there is nothing else. I think you're fine. I think you got to a point where you can manage your emotions. You understand like why you feel the way you feel, when you feel it, and how to manage that. Like, I rarely have meltdowns now, like rarely, and before I would have it for like, I don't know, something would happen and I'll be just like already having a meltdown, Now I have time to process it and go through it, and sometimes the meltdown never even come, I manage it, like, for real. And that's amazing to me. Like, I've never experienced that. So I'm at a point where, of course, I still feel autistic, like I'm very much autistic. Even like to write down an email, like I have to, if I type one paragraph, like 3 lines, the next has to have 3, and then 3, and then 3. Like, it can't have 2 or 5 or, like 7 or 1. Like, they all have to have 3. And then if one, like, okay, so I wrote one paragraph 3, the second 3, and then the fourth paragraph, the third paragraph, it has to be like 4 lines. I go up and alter like they all have to be 4 now. You know what I mean? Like I have to. And this is like the type of thing that consumes my brain. Like that happens a lot, like in a lot of things. Like I'm very particular in how I do my things, like the order. And I love the alphabet, for example. Like this project behind me, this is the alphabet. Like each page, each one of those figures is a letter, and they all have their little world happening around them. This is a project that I can make a video about, like, you know, because it's a very complex thing. That it was a book, like you would open it in a circular way, so it was like a mandala type of thing, and it had to do with dreams and the unconscious mind and stuff like that. But yeah, I love like sequence. So the alphabet, I love the alphabet, like the order. And yeah, so I'm still autistic, of course. I'm released from therapy, but I'm just released because I can manage myself now better. And I don't really talk about autism anymore because I'm just trying to work, and I've tried like working in the autism community, but it was like too hard because it's hard for you to be reliving your life with everyone you talk to, you know, like every autistic person that you meet, you're gonna talk about autism and how you got diagnosed and stuff like that, how you found out, and then you just see that, you know, like it's your story happening like all over again. You know, like every autistic person, like we go through the same things. Like we were weird kids and nobody understood us. We were like, we struggled. Emotions, like we feel it too much or we don't feel it. Like, well, we feel it, but we don't really have access to feeling it. So we don't process it. Like it's weird. Like the autistic brain, it's amazing. Like I love meeting autistic people. I think that we are like interesting, you know. But at the same time, people that like work with autism, like autistic people working within the autistic community, like I'm an artist, so I try to illustrate autistic people's stories and stuff. And it's hard, you know, because every time you talk to someone and they tell you your story, well, they tell you their story, you're like, oh, that's just like my story, you know. So it's kind of like you relive it, and it wasn't for me. So, but yeah, this was my autism story. I found out watching Glow Up on Netflix. I then got my formal diagnosis, which it's great, but I really don't think the formal diagnosis is necessary because it's expensive, it's hard. Some people like are so far away from having a formal diagnosis, and that doesn't make them less autistic. So yeah, if somebody comes to me and tell me like, oh, I think I'm autistic, which happened already, like after I found out I was autistic, and I told that to people like around me, they told me, or I told them like, oh, I think you are too. Or they would come to me and say like, oh, I think I am too. Like, what do you think? And they would tell me something. So yeah, I think that if you think you're autistic, it's worth searching more about it, talking to people about it. And if it's affordable to you, go for a formal diagnosis. It might help you too, like to have some type of something, you know, like some type of support, but not really, you know, like we know that there is no really support for us, but at least you have a paper signed, you know. I don't know, I have that and I feel good about it, like having that. It's kind of like well, it is a document, so it's kind of like back me up on what I'm saying, you know. Like that's something that I got from the formal paper that says that I'm autistic. My dog has a paper too that says that she's my support dog, so in theory I can travel with her, like by bus, by plane, and I've traveled with her by bus like twice or 3 times, but every time is like very hard to actually get her on the bus because they don't understand that I'm autistic, because I don't look autistic, and they don't get it that, like, my dog, she's not a golden retriever, and so they don't understand that she is a support dog. Like, they talk about assistance dog, which is like for blind people and stuff, like it's different. So, well, that's something that helped, having her as my support dog. But like traveling by plane, that's like almost impossible with her because she's bigger than a dog this size that could go in my carry-on and go with me in the plane. So they want to put her in the place like with the bags and stuff, so it's like no way. So I'm not, I'm not traveling with her like that. It's dangerous. And so yeah, that's it. That's my autism experience. If you want to know more about the things that I do, my art stuff, my work, go to my website. I'll leave the link in the description of this video. And if you like my content, subscribe so you don't miss other videos like this. And I'll see you some other time. Bye.